duck, let's talk about duck a little bit, right? Last week I was talking about chickens and turkeys and ostriches and things like that, but there's another category of poultry or fowl, right? And it's the waterfowl, your duck, your geese, right? And everything in between. All of this waterfowl has a very, very different body style, and the meat is extremely different. You guys saw those duck breasts. Look at them. That doesn't look anything like chicken, nothing like chicken, right? Super, super dark red. Generally speaking, the more a muscle exercises, the redder it's going to get. It gets more myoglobin in the muscle tissue, which kind of carries oxygen to the muscles for exercise, right? So you've got a barnyard chicken or your factory farm chickens, the Foster farms, all of those, right? Those guys are stuck in a hen house, and I'm sorry to tell you, but those birds don't fly. They walk around their entire life. If they're lucky, they got room to walk around, right? A bird like a duck, those birds fly. They're constantly using their wings. They exercise those muscles more. And that is why we see this much, much darker meat in a duck, right? And their legs are, they're walking around more. They're going to have a lot more of that red myoglobin in that leg meat as well, right? The legs are going to be tougher. The breast meat is not tough or anything. And what I often say about the breast meat on duck, it's very, very different. It's almost like eating a steak. It's like red meat. It looks like red meat, right? Now, a couple of things about duck. A lot of people are just like, I don't like duck, it's too fatty. Well, I think a lot of people have never tried duck properly done, okay? Duck is very, very fatty, but the fat mostly resides underneath the skin, that layer of skin. They're waterfowl, and that's their insulation. It keeps them warm, right? So they've got lots and lots of fat, but it's all inside, or it's all on the exterior. It's all on the outside, right? The flesh itself, those duck breasts that I'm looking at, there's like no marbling in there like meat has, like beef has or something like that, right? So it's actually really, really lean meat. And what you want to do is, because it's so lean, we tend to cook it under, okay? We tend to cook it about medium rare, medium-ish or so. I like medium, maybe not so much medium rare, right? But that medium duck, it's still undercooked, and it is going to give us a texture. Like I said, it eats just like steak, okay? It's just like eating a rare steak. And so I really, really love the way it comes out. I mentioned to someone last week, it's just like roast duck. I'm not even interested. Roast duck, that breast gets cooked all the way, and when you eat the breast after it's been roasted, it's just like eating mouthfuls of sand, right? It's like buckets of sand. Who wants to eat that stuff? It's totally, totally dry, sucks all the moisture out of your mouth, right? And so what you're going to see today is I am going to get the fat from underneath the skin. I'm going to render all of that out of there. And what I want to do is create the skin on that duck breast. I want to cook it till it's crispy like bacon. What we're doing is making duck bacon on the outside of this duck. I'm going to render and render and render until that skin's complete. I've cooked out most of, a majority of that fat in there, and the skin's really, really crispy. And then I'm just going to set it aside. I'm not really cooking at this point. This is just rendering. This is like a prep thing, okay? Once that skin is all cooked off, I set it aside, and then when it's time to fire, I'm going to make gnocchi, I'm going to do all this other stuff. When it's time to fire dinner, all I got to do is get a saute pan smoking hot. You guys saw searing last week if you were with me, okay? We roll it around in that pan, get it nice and seared on the outside, and just take it to about medium, and then I let it rest. Just like we rest roasts, we also rest smaller pieces like steaks and duck breasts and things like that. I'm going to allow that to rest, and then I'll slice it up and lay it on out along with my gnocchi, okay? It's going to have meat in there that's just like I said, red meat, just like eating a rare steak, but it's going to have that crispy duck skin on top that's just like duck bacon, and it's super, super good, right? And so that's kind of the experience of duck. That's what I'm looking for, okay? So let me go ahead and start working on the actual duck breast. In order to render this, what I want to do is I want to score the skin. I'm going to cut the skin in kind of a pattern, and that's going to allow fat to exit the duck breast as it cooks, okay? We're gonna render that fat out of there. That's the idea, okay? Now, I'm gonna wash hands again, okay? I've been touching my glasses and things. And then I will address the bird. I've still got that funky Rick James in my head. Give it to me what you say. Okay, here we go. All right, David, good to see you. All right. Anybody else? Oh my gosh, I'm never gonna get to the end of this. Jim, Melissa, Sonia, awesome, good to see everybody. Let's do one of these, and then we'll get into this duck. Anybody else getting their drink on? Okay, now I told you I had laid that duck breast out on a frozen plate, or any frozen surface will work, and so the skin is firmed up a little bit. I mean, actually the fat has firmed up a little bit under there. And now I'm gonna go ahead and pull it off. I've got some fairly firm fat here that's gonna be pretty nice to work with, okay? What I did is I pulled out an old carbon steel knife that I have that's a little bit flexible. I don't know if you can see that, but it's a little flexy, okay? And I'm going to go ahead and start working across the skin on this. Now let me give this a little adjustment here. Hold on. I don't think you guys can see very well. I think you guys can see it now, okay? So, first thing, I don't want to cut directly straight up and down with my knife like this. I'm going to cut into the flesh of that duck breast. So I angle my knife when I do these cuts, okay? I angle it about as shallow as I go. I get underneath there, and I don't want to go straight across and then straight across this way. I don't want T's, I want X's. So I'm going to do angled cuts going at an angle on the breast. My knife is angled and my breast is angled, okay? It looks like this. By the way, this other hand is gonna keep really, really flat. This is a very common butcher cut right here, or butcher position, where you keep this hand very, very flat as you're making other cuts, okay? It just kind of stabilizes things. So I'm gonna get in here and I'm gonna go ahead and try and open up that skin all the way across. So there's a cut, and a cut. I'm trying to take it all the way down. I went a little deep into the meat that time. Oops. Try to get it super shallow. Went a little deep that time. Trying to keep them evenly spaced. And notice I'm not trimming any of the skin around this, by the way. If you trim up the skin around the sides, the skin will shrink as it cooks, and it's gonna look like a little Band-Aid on top of this duck breast, okay? So leave all of that skin on there. You're gonna want that. It'll shrink. Okay, now I'm gonna turn the breast around, and I'm gonna do an angle go in this direction. Angle that blade so you're not cutting down into the meat. And you're opening up as much of that skin so fat can escape as possible. These are monster duck breasts. Look at that. They're practically geese. So there's one, and I'll go for another, okay? This duck, by the way, you want to work super fast. I've been talking so long, it's already getting pretty soft, okay? So again, you want that firm, nice and fat to really get a nice score on this. Going at my angle again, cutting across. Opening up that skin. So awesome. I'm pretty excited about having this for dinner tonight. I love duck. Love it. It is delicious. Okay, and then I'm gonna turn the duck. I'm not turning my body, and I just go at another angle. Beautiful little cross marks across the top. I'm going a little fast now. You don't have to go that fast. Take your time, make it nice, or make it twice. An old Qitchen saying. I imagine they say that in a lot of businesses. Okay, let me get this board out of here. I'm done with that for now. I'm gonna wash hands for a sec. Remember I mentioned we're gonna be cooking this to about medium or so. We don't need to worry about salmonella with ducks, okay? We tend a couple of things here. First of all, there's no bacteria inside those duck breasts, so if I completely sear the outside, I've killed any bacteria that's gonna be in there, any of that salmonella or whatever I might have. But salmonella is really not such a problem when we're working with duck or turkey. It's those chicken processing plants that are so filthy and nasty that kind of get the product so infected and get salmonella just everywhere, right? Much cleaner. These guys are done by, they have like artisan producers that raise these animals cruelty free, and just like every step of the way is just these animals are just taken care of, and it's just never that just garbage product that you're getting from factory farms or something like that, and you're never gonna have to worry about that salmonella on there. Okay, so I'm gonna leave that board out of the way for a minute. The next step with this duck is I could do several things. Like I've worked places where they want like a sugary marinade on it, like a soy honey marinade on the duck. When we're rendering, that soy or the honey in there is just gonna scorch on you, right? When I do the rendering process, I tend to do most of it and then I'm gonna add my flavorings to it. So I'm gonna render these guys, then I'm gonna add a little bit of a spice on the outside of it, and then when I do my searing at the end, that's when I'm gonna pick up the cooking of that spices and that infusion of those flavors, okay? So I'm not gonna have any spices at this stage, but I am gonna season the living daylights out of this thing. I talked about that last week. We need lots of salt when we are cooking food, right? Especially a big old dense duck breast like this, right? I need to be able to penetrate that meat. And I want a ton of salt on that skin because that is gonna help that skin crisp up. It'll draw moisture out and really help get that skin nice and crispy as it renders, okay? So, tons of salt on this side. Can you guys see that duck breast at all? I think you can. I'm really gonna crust it on this side. I practically want it sitting up on salt as it's sitting in the pan. Like that's what I'm talking about. Insane amounts on this side. Again, when that skin gets crispy, it's gonna be like duck bacon. It's so awesome, it's so good. I've had so many students over the years that have never had duck in their life. They taste it and they're just insanely in love with it because it is so delicious. I know I keep saying that. All right, and now I'll flip them over. I'm not gonna do the other side quite as much. I got a little bit of skin to get there. But I just salted the living daylights out of that. This side, not so much. I'm not doing pepper, I'm not doing any of that stuff. My spices are gonna come later. And by the way, my spices today, I'm gonna do a little combination of fennel seed and coriander. I love that flavor on the duck, okay? So that's what you're gonna see me do. And it's also very simple, okay? I've told you before, last week I was talking about I don't like recipes with 50 different ingredients. I wanna show you guys, I wanna show you the technique. That's what I'm featuring. So my recipes, my ingredients are all super, super simple, okay? All right, so my duck is thoroughly salted. My pan, I've just got it just slightly warm. I'm gonna start turning it up, but this is not like searing at all. When we seared last week, we talked about getting that pan smoking hot and hearing it sizzle and all of that stuff, right? This is not that. This is rendering and this is at a very, very low temperature. I'm probably going about 180 or so. I'm not looking for color here at all. I'm just looking to cook the fat out of this, okay? Quite frankly, I almost never even turn my pan on ahead of time. I usually just put it in a cold pan and then turn it on, okay? And as soon as I start seeing fat come out of here, I'm probably gonna turn that down a little bit. I won't be flipping this at this point. All I'm doing is working on the skin here, okay? All I'm doing is working on the skin. Okay. Okay. I'm starting to hear a tiny, tiny bit of sizzle in there, okay? Really tiny. Let's see who's here. Jim, Melissa, Jennifer, Frank McCall, good to see you, brother. David, Shelby Davis, excellent. Hey, my cousin Lily, good to see you out there. Cynthia, Letitia again. Pat, Lisa, see if we got any questions here. Are you taking questions? How did you get into being a chef? I could tell that story real quick, okay? It's just something I fell into, okay? When I was a kid, I was one of those free-range kids. Like, nobody raised me. I was totally out there running wild on the streets. I was like an urban feral child, right? I never had any direction at all, and I eventually got into, I got in my teenage years, and I started getting into rock and roll bands and everything, and I was like, in a band across town. I lived out in the suburbs, but in a band across town, and my bandmates got me a job as a dishwasher at a restaurant. And then I got another job after that in a restaurant, and another one, and before you knew it, I'd worked at several places. I worked a couple of restaurants around town here. The third restaurant I worked at was totally owned by the mob. It was like Goodfellas, where they're busting out the restaurant, running up credit on the joint, running up, charging everything on the joint's credit, and then they're just gonna like burn the place down or something, right? I worked for those guys a little bit and had to get out of that. It was like a full-on mob place. When I was 18 years